So these are just some games I had to mention for this decade, and I had to make this video real quick. I'm also releasing this video today because it's PlayStation's 25th anniversary, and a lot of these games are PlayStation exclusives. And I just had to give a big shout out to PlayStation because that has been they have like carried me through my gaming journey all my life, starting out on a PS2. Hey guys, and welcome to the end of the year. 2019 is about to be over, which means the decade is about to be over. We're about to be out of the 2010s, or 20 teens, or whatever you'd like to call them, which is a very big deal for me considering um, the last decade I kind of like remember living through was the early, or the 2000s. And the PS3 had just sort of taken off. I got my PS3 in 2009, and as you know, like the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation went well into the 2010s. So like my introduction to online gaming and everything originates in this decade, probably along with a lot of other people, which marks a lot of milestones for, well, console gaming and just gaming as a whole. Plus, YouTube got acquired by Google and took off like crazy with Let's Plays, and it just threw everything around. We were no longer in the generation of platformers and such. So I decided to make a list of landmark games and just games that stood out to me during this decade. I'm probably missing a lot because obviously hundreds of games have come out in the past 10 years, and like nerd culture became a thing and just all sorts of stuff. I'm going to start off with this very unprofessional list, just trying to kind of go by date and by brand. I'm going to start off with adventure games just because that encompasses a lot of things that I can talk about. Um, First off, I'd like to mention some games that sort of came out in 2009, but to me represent the 2010s because they came out either mid to end 2009, and that bled into the 2010 kind of culture. First off, Batman Arkham, basically the whole series, but it started off in 2009. The first one came out in August. Batman Arkham Asylum. I didn't get into this game till last year. The first game is very spooky, but it's basically dark, gritty Batman game, and it did like one of the most impressive features in 2010, which was make a good superhero game. Prior to that, we didn't have too many good superhero games. So that had such a cult following. I knew a lot of people who really like that series, and now you can pick it up for practically nothing. PlayStation Plus, like a couple months ago, just released the whole series for free. Obviously, you can't download that now, but you can get the games for like $4 on PS3 and Xbox 360. So there you go. Moving down the line is Skyrim. Skyrim came out in 2011. Can you believe it's been that long? I don't even feel like it needs an introduction. That game has created such a following, so many mods for it for PC gamers. The only downside to it was the PS3 port had horrible frame rate because the PS3, although had very cool technical capabilities, no one really could unlock them because the thing was a nightmare to develop for. So there's Skyrim. It's an open world action adventure RPG, and you're basically like set in a mythical world with tons of backstory, and hopefully they're making a, I would hate to say sequel to Skyrim because Skyrim's actually the fifth in the series of the Elder Scrolls games, so they're making the Elder Scrolls 6 hopefully, and hopefully Bethesda doesn't screw this one up. In the same year, we got Infamous 2, possibly my favorite Infamous game. It polished off a lot of like the repetitiveness of the first game, but still kept like the core gray, dirty vibe of Infamous, which in the early 2000s was like a staple in gaming. Everything was gray. That's why I also put it on here. PlayStation 3 exclusive and probably converted a lot of people to PlayStation because that was a really good exclusive. The only thing I dislike about it is the voice actor either did a different voice or it's a different voice actor. I like the voice actor in the first Infamous game or how they did the voice. Uncharted 3 also came out in the same year, and Naughty Dog was one of the few companies that was capable of developing to the PS3's full extent. So that game still holds up to graphics today. It is amazing. And since we're talking about the Uncharted games, and I feel like they're kind of part of this decade while they're also kind of part of the last decade, Uncharted 4 blew everyone away in 2016 with pretty much the same thing as Uncharted 3 in relevance, but it's just a great plot, great story, great action. You got the like gameplay of later Tomb Raider games mixed with Indiana Jones, mixed with like Naughty Dog's top quality. It's just a great series, and I'm glad to have gotten to experience it this decade. Now we're on to, we're still in 2011 with L.A. Noire. That game had a lot of hype. Again, big staple of the 2010s was a lot of games had a lot of hype, and even though to me they lived up to the hype, to probably everyone else they didn't, because I guess their hype levels were higher than mine. L.A. Noire, I think, was one of the first games to use motion capture for like the facial expressions, and you're supposed to be able to guess when interrogating and questioning people whether they were lying or telling the truth. And it was like this linear Grand Theft Auto 1950s secret agent type of game. Basically you just play an LA cop and you investigate stuff, but definitely worth mentioning for the 2010s. It for some reason got re-released on the Switch recently, even though it's from 2011, so you can get it there. It's a very mature game. I haven't really replayed it for that reason because I am super sensitive for some reason, but it was definitely a good ending and I enjoyed my time with it. On to 2012, we have so many great games came out in 2012, but in the adventure slash action shooter category, Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 basically is what they copied with Far Cry 4 and 5. Like, they've all pretty much been the same since Far Cry 3 in a lot of reviewers' opinions, but Far Cry 3 is the one that sort of punched Far Cry out of the gate and became a huge YouTube phenomenon for a period of time. Another game that came out in 2012, which is the only game of the series I've beaten, is Assassin's Creed 3. Again, a really great game. I kind of polished out the Assassin's Creed formula, and since it was 2012, they kind of played on the end of the world is happening in 2012 sort of situation. And then also in 2012, we got most of the PlayStation Vita's library, so I put Gravity Rush on there, a really good game that I believe released on the PS Vita and PS4. They remastered it on PS4, and then the sequel that came out on PS4. It's a motion-controlled gravity shifting game, and to me, that time period will always represent the PS Vita, my Sony Xperia Play, and making stupid videos on my iPad. The following year was the end of the PS3 era, but we got The Last of Us and Grand Theft Auto 5, which practically halted anyone from buying the next generation of consoles because Grand Theft Auto 5 was one of the best-selling games of all time, and The Last of Us was such a mind-blowing release for most people. It pretty much had next generation graphics because, again, Naughty Dog knew how to develop for PS3, and it mixed the zombies that everyone was craving from. Again, this decade was kind of the zombie apocalypse decade, but it had zombies and the story elements from Uncharted and stealth, and it was something we've never seen before, while at the same time incorporating everything from that console generation. And then Grand Theft Auto 5 was Grand Theft Auto, but very well polished, and had multiplayer that everyone wanted. Plus, you could not get it on PC for like another year or two, so buying it on PS3 or Xbox was your only way to go. That same year, for me, a staple of the decade was Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, almost like 8 years after the previous Sly Cooper had released. They released a sequel, the Sly 3, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, which ended on a cliffhanger, and we may never see the ending of the Sly Cooper series, but for some people, that was their favorite Sly Cooper. Mine was Sly 3, but it is a very good game. Released on PS Vita and PS3. If you ever want a 3D platformer that came out in the 2010s, totally would recommend Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. There's one other 3D platformer in this cartoony fashion on this list that we'll come to very shortly. In 2014, there was a lot of hype for this game called Watch Dogs, and I was one of them. I was fully sunken into nerd culture at that time, and or I guess gaming culture. For some reason, it has developed into nerd culture, and that's why GameStop's full of Funko Pops, but that's another story for another day. Watch Dogs bragged about sort of being this futuristic, I don't know, anonymous simulator where you're like a hacker who basically control everything in the city, and it's mixed with like Grand Theft Auto elements. I took a lot of things out of the culture and sort of influenced them in the game. And I think that's what a lot of political people did, because looking back on it, apparently a lot of people in politics were trying to use it to argue how technology will be the end of us. But basically, many things are connected to the internet, and you are able to control it with your smartphone. You're able to hack people's bank accounts, control stoplights, stuff like that. I primarily got wrapped up in the story, and I still think it's a very superb game, and it lived up to the hype for me, because when I get hyped about games, I actually don't research them at all. So I didn't have any expectations. Apparently some people felt lied to, and the reason it's on this list is because it was one of those perfect examples of a game that was hyped so high that when it came out, everyone was disappointed who was actually like surrounding themselves with information about the game. As for me, I was not surrounding myself with information about the game, and I think a 9 out of 10 rating at the time would have been fair, because that's kind of what I wanted, at least at the time. Next year, PS4, everyone's freaking out. Fallout 4 drops. And Fallout 4 is probably my favorite game for the PS4 for the longest time, because I could build stuff. I could scrap all this junk and just make giant forts, but I could also like go around and complete side quests all day. You can decide if your character wants to wear a ring on what hand, and obviously people who played Skyrim and stuff know all this from Bethesda, but this was my first time going into a Fallout game, and this was so well polished. When I went back to Fallout 3, I couldn't complete it because Fallout 4 just had so much to it. I enjoyed it so much, and that game to me represents this generation so well, because it's massive and just has the open world that everyone in the gaming community for some reason loves, and it has the customizable options along with better graphics from previous generations. Obviously, you can't make that a game that big with that good of graphics, but to me it wraps up this generation very well. You could put hundreds of hours into it, and since it's released on PC now, there's a modding community, which Bethesda treats modders pretty badly, but there's some cool YouTube videos that have come out of it. Then, 2017, last of the adventure games, we have Breath of the Wild. That's huge, right? That's been like some people's favorite Zelda game. On the Nintendo Switch, which again sort of came out of nowhere. People were worried Nintendo was just going nowhere with the Wii U. The Switch drops, they drop Zelda Breath of the Wild, and oh boy, that is a gem of a game. And technically, in the same year, A Hat in Time releases. A Hat in Time was a Kickstarter game, which is why it's on this list, that was being kickstarted almost through the entire 2010s. And it was basically people just begging for another cutesy 3D platformer that they came to love in the 90s and 2000s. And they finally delivered, and it's really good. You can pick it up physically on the Switch or basically download it on anything else. And it's just a good 3D platformer. It kind of reminds me of a mix of Sly Cooper mixed with Spyro mixed with Super Mario 64. So that sort of represented more of nerd culture, I think, because of all the nostalgia, and that's when sort of color came back into gaming. Now, my other category, viral games. I just realized I didn't put something on this list, so I'll have to mention it. But viral games basically represent YouTube and nerd culture. I'm sorry I keep saying that. I've never said that term except in this video. All the things it's created, because I mean YouTube really hit, especially like Let's Plays really took off in like 2011, 2012. So like so much came out of that. For example, 2010, Happy Wheels. Remember freaking Toby Games' like 500 part Happy Wheels series? Every day was a Happy Wheels video. Everyone on YouTube has played Happy Wheels. I've played Happy Wheels. It's a like flash game where you just like don't want your characters to be gored in user created levels. And oh boy, does that mark a decade. Same time, sort of marking the death of the previous decade, but Skate 3 came out in 2010. It also took off maybe in like 2013 when YouTubers picked it back up. But yeah, it sort of marks the 2010s or the 2000s, but it marks the 2010s nostalgia for the 2000s, because wasn't this decade the decade of nostalgia? We brought back freaking record players, skateboarding, punk rock bands are getting back together. It's a very weird time in history, but Skate 3. Now, everyone's going to be up for debate on this one. I have Minecraft next in 2011 because that's when it officially launched. Now, I know Minecraft launched in 2009 because I had the beta too, but it didn't like come out of development until 2011. So I'm saying 2011 was Minecraft. Minecraft and the same year Terraria. Do I even need to talk about those two? They basically created like the YouTube Let's Play community single-handedly. Minecraft was, some people got locked into Minecraft where that was what their channel became. That's all they play. And it's still going strong today. That game lasted this entire decade, and it's getting updates and playing. PewDiePie's playing it now. I mean, he started off playing Minecraft, and now he's back to playing Minecraft. It's a game that truly survived the 2010s, and sort of, I think if we look back in history at the 2010s, it's going to be Minecraft and Terraria. And in 2012, when everyone was playing horror games, like PewDiePie starting off with Amnesia, and Slender. Remember Slender, that viral hit that tormented kids for a year? It kind of created its own genre, because for like 5 years after that, people were just making Slender clones where you walk around with a flashlight and pick up notes. In 2014, we saw another cult classic, Five Nights at Freddy's, which again created an entire community around it, and basically like Markiplier's like favorite series for a while. I'm not sure in his words if he'd say that, but people got really into Markiplier playing Five Nights at Freddy's and like the conspiracies around it. And game after game in 2014 and 2015, we got Five Nights at Freddy's. And it's sad that it kind of stopped, but playing horror games on YouTube was definitely a big part of the early 2010s. I remember people kind of joking about all you had to do to become famous was play a horror game on YouTube. After that sort of came like Steam Greenlight and such, where you can play unreleased games, and a game that came out of that was Subnautica. The internet says Subnautica came out in 2018, but I have a feeling it was in development many years before that, and it represents sort of all those survival games that were coming out around the same time. Only this one was unique because you were primarily underwater most of the time, and as they were updating it, YouTubers would play it, and you'd just be shocked at the new things they throw into the game. In 2017 and sort of early 2018, the juggernaut that is Fortnite took off with its Battle Royale mode, and I don't even need to talk about Fortnite. That game's so popular. They play it on their phones at lunch period in school. It caused so many memes and so many memories. And then I believe earlier this year, we got Apex Legends, which is just Titanfall mixed with Fortnite. It's a first-person shooter battle royale game that was much more fast-paced than Fortnite, but didn't have the building. And it introduced the non-sort of verbal communications by tagging things, which Fortnite immediately stole because they saw how good that system was. And somewhere in that list, I forgot to mention Telltale Games. Oh my gosh. Once again, YouTube phenomenon, and The Walking Dead basically summed up the early 2010s because zombies, oh my gosh, were zombies popular. They were in Call of Duty, they were in the media, they were in video games everywhere. I don't know what people's obsession with zombie was. I think it was we were all just waiting for the apocalypse because Obama was supposedly the Antichrist. So why not zombies? And then you can't make a list about the 2010s without mentioning first-person shooters. Call of Duty was the only game I played from like 2009 to 2014. That and Battlefield were like so popular. People still talk about how Call of Duty is the only game they play because that was just the game everyone bought, kind of like Fortnite. You just like, oh, what does our squad play tonight? Well, obviously the newest Call of Duty. So I'm just gonna mention Modern Warfare 2, which released I think in November 2009, and the first Black Ops. Those games to me, we played for so long, mark the 2010s almost immediately. I know some people would say Battlefield Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 and 4. I think Battlefield 4 still somewhat has a community to it. Just those games took off in the past 10 years. And then MAG. MAG was my favorite first-person shooter next to Modern Warfare 2. Came out in the end of 2009 again, but again, really good first-person shooter. It was a PS3 exclusive, and it introduced like 264 first-person battles where you sort of you broke up into platoons, and the platoons broke up into squads, and then you could be a squad leader. And I think you had a higher chance of becoming a squad leader if you were like the leader of a clan, and that's where my PlayStation Brotherhood clan came from. It was a massive game. I was always a medic. You could like upgrade different weapons. It's great. I just wish I could talk about it more because the servers were taken down like back in 2014 or something, which is really sad because it was a great game, but just didn't stick around. I guess it was too similar to all the other first-person shooters. In 2011, we got, I believe, Crysis 2, and Crysis was a like staple for PC gamers because the graphics were insane, and another game that Toby Games did a playthrough of. So Crysis 2 is on the list just because it was very popular when it came out, and Killzone 3, again, another first-person shooter that was in 2011. To me, Killzone 3, one of the best Killzones, might be the best Killzone. Introduced this cool function. If you had a PlayStation 3D TV, you could each wear a pair of glasses, and play through the campaign with your own full screen. Just player 1 wore one glasses and player 2 wore the other glasses, and it, I think, cut the pixels in half so you each could see a full screen with the glasses you were wearing. So it was a cool multiplayer experience, and it was just like a pretty solid game. It was kind of like Killzone being like, you know what? We're not going to be a Halo clone. We're going to be like our own thing. And it was pretty good. 2012 saw probably the darkest first-person shooter. Actually, it was a third-person shooter, but it's in this category because it fits the theme. Spec Ops The Line. Spec Ops The Line is like the serious dark shooter that like everyone was looking for, but this one like actually took itself seriously. And I believe it has multiple endings and you make multiple choices, which I didn't know going into the game in 2012. I was like 14. So it's just that game. It'll shock you. Some people who like thought Call of Duty was like way overhyped really cling to Spec Ops The Line, and I should probably finish that game sometime. I've played like 80% of it and never beat it. Then I just have to mention 2016 we got Titanfall 2, which stole so much of Call of Duty fan base because it basically was what Call of Duty always wanted to be. The original Titanfall, and then Titanfall 2 won so many people over because it actually had a campaign, and Titanfall introduced double jumping, wall running, titans, and a grappling hook, which again, all sort of things Call of Duty took influence from, and it's that universe that Apex Legends is built off of too. So these are just some games I had to mention for this decade, and I had to make this video real quick. I'm also releasing this video today because it's PlayStation's 25th anniversary, and a lot of these games are PlayStation exclusives, and I just had to give a big shout out to PlayStation because they have like carried me through my gaming journey all my life, starting out on a PS2, and I just love their games. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of like action adventure platformer games, and when everyone was like playing Call of Duty and Halo on Xbox, I was playing Uncharted and Ratchet and Clank on my PS2 and PS3. So just have to say congratulations to 25 years PlayStation, and congratulations to all of you for making it through this video. Please leave many comments about what games you really enjoyed in the past decade. Maybe you'll realize like it's very hard to narrow down, and my voice I feel like is getting deeper through this video because it's getting drier, but thank you guys so much for watching. I hope I can edit this video before 1 a.m. and I'll see you guys next time. Oh, and a happy new year for all of us in the next couple of weeks. Number 7 is Sly Cooper. Basically the entire series, but I'm recommending 3, or the most recent one on PS3 and PlayStation Vita, Thieves in Time. Sly Cooper is a game I grew up on. It is one of my favorite gaming series ever. It features